Hello, everyone. The one called Fate knocks at your door yet again. It's I, Hunt, back with another episode of Tabletop Recap. Yes, I'm sorry, it is just me yet again. But hopefully very soon we will be able to have some kind of physical gaming session where I can make this podcast with my friends yet again. For those asking why they can't just be on it over the internet, one, I don't have very good internet at my place. And two, they don't have good mics. We always use this now, Yeti mic. So that's that. But today we're going to talk about some of the D&D quests I have to run. Most, if not all of mine, were written to be one-shots. Basically just small ones we play between bigger campaigns. I prefer to play over DMing, so all mine are just intentionally short, plus short stories are kind of just the format I'm used to. Some of these have been played and talked about on the podcast already. I've had to homebrew a lot of races like Saurians, Birdfolk. My automaton race is different than Warforged. But yeah, the first one I wrote, this is the order I wrote them in, not the order they'll be played in. Sauria, the Lost World. The group is contracted to go to an island called Sauria, also known as the Lost World, where they have to free all of the people there from these automatons that came to wipe them out and steal their resources. There are dinosaur people, lizard folk, bird folk, and turtles, but they're all kind of different because they've been stuck on this island. Like the turtles all look kind of like alligator snapping turtles, more prehistoric looking. The bird folk are a new bird race. I know D&D has a couple bird races already, but this is a different bird race. They're more like macaws, kind of real tropical birds. And the lizard folk are essentially the same, though. They're just they have more vibrant colors is all. And then the Saurians are really cool. They kind of stand up like T-Rexes, but they have ankylosaur clubs on the end of their tails, stegosaur spines on their backs, and some of them have tiny little horns like a triceratops. Very, very cool, but you have to convince the automatons or fight the automatons in order to make them leave. But you can talk to all the different species there. There's dinosaurs you fight, etc., etc. I even based one of the creatures, a shifting ceratops. It's kind of basically a swamp thing, ceratops, based on a Magic the Gathering card that's in my deck. The next adventure I wrote is called Woman of the Fog, which we're going to talk more about soon. It's based on a real-life ghost encounter I had. I'm still not entirely convinced it was a ghost, but my dogs saw it, so that's something for a different podcast. We actually do literally have a podcast based on it called In the Fog, where we do horror anthology stories with award-winning filmmaker Lionel Jeffries. Check that out at B3 Podcasts. But Woman of the Fog there's this woman who was murdered about a week ago, and this fog has been put over the whole town, and it won't be lifted, and the sun won't come out on this town again until her murderer is caught and delivered to her. She waits on the hill in the fog, and she made a deal with the god. She could come back to get justice, but she can't tell who her murderer was, and if someone brings her an innocent person to be judged, then those people have to be punished, and she can never get her justice by her own hands. So it's a murder mystery. You basically have to figure out who killed her. And it's pretty cool. And that all takes place in my main town, Quarantown. Called it Quarantown because I wrote it in quarantine. And this town will be kind of the home base of the adventurers. There's also one called Giants and Jelly Beans. Yep, Giants and Jelly Beans. It's based on the Rick and Morty Mr. Meeseeks episode, because remember one of the plots in there was about Rick and Morty in the fantasy world of the Giants. And the first half is basically the same as Rick and Morty, but then it's later, and the Jelly Bean King actually sends you on a quest after you get out of Giant Court. It's really fun. I think it actually ended up being really funny, and I'm very proud of it. I really expanded on the jelly bean lore. All the people in the town were jelly bean people. Their main crops were jelly beans, and the stalks that led up to the cloud giants were jelly bean stalks. I thought it was really good. Then there's one called Genocide. This one we haven't gotten a chance to play yet with anybody. It's about this huge creature. It's based on Shin Godzilla very loosely. This creature that's made out of corpses attacking this town, and the players will be faced with a very difficult choice regarding this creature. I don't want to say more, but I think it's going to be really interesting, and I actually am expecting a player to die during this one, because I homebrewed the Genocide monster, and it's tough. It's tough. It's really tough. And then there's... I'm not sure what I want to call it. I guess I'm just going to call it Velocipaster. If you haven't seen the movie Velocipaster, definitely treat yourself. It's on Amazon Prime, so if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch it for free. It's a lot like Wolf Cop, if you've seen Wolf Cop. But Velocipaster is a movie about a priest who turns into a were T-Rex. Not a pastor, not a velociraptor. But mine is a velociraptor. It is about a were velociraptor. This priest, who was sent as a missionary to Soria, becomes a were velociraptor, and it's about dealing with him and this goddess that had lost power a long time ago, but now she's back with a vengeance. And it'll be really, really cool, I think. I think the last podcast episode was our Velocipaster episode, actually. Then I wrote one called Isle of the Cyclops, based loosely off of Ray Harryhausen's The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. If you've seen that movie, Cyclops plays a big role in it. And it's about a princess who is kidnapped by Cyclops once their ship stops for food and water and supplies, etc. And it's about having to go and get this princess from the Cyclops. It's pretty basic, but it actually is a lot more dialogue heavy than you would expect. That's one thing about my quests. They're all pretty dialogue heavy. I really like the roleplay aspects. So they're all, you got to talk your way out of a lot of stuff. Like, you can get the princess without fighting at all. Possibly, but unlikely. Then there's one I just wrote called The Sea Hag's Curse, based on Pumpkinhead, and a tiny, tiny bit on Pumpkinhead 3. Because Pumpkinhead's one of my favorite films. And this is kind of my punishment towards two of my players, because one of them loves Pumpkinhead. He's seen all 4 films, and then 2 of them refuse to watch Pumpkinhead because they're scared of horror movies. They're scared, and I know they're listening to this, and you're little babies. They wouldn't watch Frankenstein's Army either. Both good films. I'm such a little turd. But a demon is ravaging the countryside. Nothing seems to be able to damage it, and you have to talk to a sea hag to see how to defeat it. I'm not going to say much more than that, because I don't want to spoil anything. If you've seen Pumpkinhead, you kind of know where it's going. But once again, most of my group has not seen Pumpkinhead. So that'll be pretty easy. And I still have one spot in my binder for one more quest. But I'm not sure what to write it about. I kind of want to do one that takes place on a ship, maybe? I don't know. I have a lot of ideas. It's just, what am I going to put? Like, lots of these are just based on movies. Like, the last 3 in here are just based on movies. But Story of the Lost World is the biggest, most complex one. And it was all just off the top of my head. Woman of the Fog, once again, based on my quote-unquote real ghost encounter. One based on a TV show episode. 1, 2, 3, 4 based on movies. Oh, jeez. Actually, to be completely honest, the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad inspired me to write Isle of the Cyclops, but it's really a lot more like the Odyssey. It's really a lot more like the Odyssey. But anyways, that's that for this. The rest of this, my friends, who are also the hosts of this podcast, and are going to play Woman of the Fog on the table in person, you have to stop listening here. You have to stop listening here. Because this is what happens in Woman of the Fog. So as I said, the fog is covering the entire town. I played this with Jesse and Joe from Project Godzilla. Check them out on YouTube. Real fun to play with. But there were several clues all over town that they had to look for. And at first, like, I think they'd never played a murder mystery campaign before, it seemed like. Because this is a campaign where you don't have to fight at all. In fact, you're not supposed to fight at all. So I don't think they really knew how to handle it at first. They just kept asking NPCs the same question. Did you know the woman that was murdered? And do you know anything about the murder? And then they'd move on. And that's kind of what they were doing at first, and it wasn't getting them anywhere, so they ended up having to mix up their questions. And then, like, the barkeep and people all had clues, and they really narrowed it down to 2 people. They had a 50-50 shot, pretty much. And they lost. They got cursed. And when you lose, you get cursed with Bog Stench, which is -2 to charisma rolls until you get the curse removed. So, but it was just a one-shot for them and not part of a campaign where the characters are shoved. Once again, all of mine are meant to be played in like a single session. However, they're all part of the same big story. Like Woman of the Fog, Sorry of the Lost World, Giants and Jelly Beans all happen in the same universe with the same characters. So that's that. I even made a little place in the town where they could buy the manor that she was murdered in for cheap because she was murdered in it, so they could have a headquarters instead of just camping on the outskirts of town all the time. But if you win, it really sets up a big campaign. And I don't want to say what happens too much if you win, and I'm not going to say who it is, because I want you guys to listen to our future Woman in the Fog episode where we play with our normal group, Karen, Big Boy Chungus, and Kami. But a lot happens, and it leads into this kind of overarching quest. There will be like 4 quests that all connect. This and Genocide are 2 of them. And then I need 2 more. And once they're done, then they can get to the big stuff. Because I have 2 big bads planned. 2 very big bads. One of them's the leader of the automatons. I got this great idea for him. But you'll hear more of that once we get to it. I'm going to close my Dungeons & Dragons binder for now. I'm thinking of watching Jason and the Argonauts, the original Ray Harryhausen one. I'm feeling a real stop motion here. Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to watch Teenagers from Outer Space. I haven't seen it before. I need to watch that. And I'm going to review it on the B3 Productions YouTube channel, so check that out. But that's it. That's all for today's episode of Tabletop Recap. Sorry that's a shorter once again. We're kind of in a place now where, with all this stuff going on, maybe we can meet soon. I just didn't want to give you guys like a month of no content, you know? What is this, Toku King? Kill me. That's another one of our podcasts. It's real kaiju, superhero-based audio drama. But there'll be more coming soon. There are several more Dungeons & Dragons episodes planned. I know it seems like it, but I promise this is not becoming a Dungeons & Dragons only podcast. I promise this is not becoming a Dungeons & Dragons only podcast. I have Pokemon trading card game episodes that we need to do. Magic the Gathering episodes that we need to do. We need to do episodes on Smash Up. We need to do episodes on the Fallout board game. We need to do episodes on the Godzilla card game. All kinds of stuff needs to be done. That's not Dungeons & Dragons. But I'm kind of on a Dungeons & Dragons kick right now for one thing, and it's the only thing I can really play because I've been playing it online. Karen and Kami don't want to play online, though. Not that I can blame them. And once again, it's hard for me to play online because my internet is terrible. Like, when I was DMing Woman of the Fog, I had to use data on my phone to talk to people on Discord. And then I had to go out into the woods because at my house, there's no signal for data. So I had to sit in the woods and it turned dark. Like, we didn't finish till 10:30 p.m. So I'm sitting in the dark in the woods DMing. That's a true story. That is an actual true story. I had a barn light with me. And the mosquitoes were all over me. It was crazy. But that's it. Once again, if you want to support the show, please check out the links in the description. We have a Patreon where you can support us month to month. We have a donation little donation section just for quick donations if you don't want to do a monthly thing. We also have social media. You can follow us at B3 Productions on Twitter, where we post updates. And that's more for our YouTube channels and all of our podcasts and everything. Plus also just some of my own personal tweet stuff. And then we also have the B3 Podcasts Facebook page, which is where we post all our podcast updates. And most of the updates are for Tabletop Recap, since it's weekly and the others are not. So that's it. Thank you all once again for your support, and I'll see you all next time when fate, you guessed it, knocks at your door.